Welcome to this video on disaster recovery planning. CISSP exam, for sure you are going to get question about the business continuity and also disaster recovery. So we are gonna focus on disaster recovery in the next few videos. Now a disaster is pretty straightforward. It's an event that cause great damages or destruction of property or loss of life. So if something happens to the organizational facility or if something worse happen where personnel happen to be injured or lose their life, that is a disaster scenario. There are two different type of disaster you need to know for the exam. One is natural disaster. This is a result of the planet, a planetary occurrence, right? Hurricane, tornadoes, earthquakes and so on. These are natural disaster. And then we also have man-made disaster. These are result of some kind of human action where you have fires, terrorist attack, cyber attack, right? Those kind of things that might cause outage or even cause loss of life. You also have what's called non-disaster, and this is where device might malfunction or fail, and now you have to go into the recovery mode for that. Okay, but for the exam you need to know natural disaster and man-made disaster. Now again, natural disaster can be earthquake where the earth will shake and tremble due to the movement of the tectonic plates on the earth's surface. Now earthquake are prevalent all throughout the world. So it's important to understand wherever your organization facility reside, you need to understand if you can be impacted by earthquake. Same with flooding, right? Flooding occurs when water overflow into dry land. So things like storm that comes from a hurricane, maybe a snowstorm or a hailstorm, because these are all form of water as well, right? So this can result in damage, water damage, certainly facility damage, and could be power outage. And also if you have things like hurricane, you could experience lightning strikes and other things as well. So again, it's important to understand where your facility resides and if you might be impacted by certain kind of disaster. For example, this is from FEMA.org. So this is the United States and this is a map of all the earthquakes that are possible in the country. So as you can see, the west coast of the United States all over here is pretty prevalent with earthquake, right? But if you go into Midwest areas, you don't see them as much. You see them little bit here towards Tennessee, right? Tennessee right here, so there's a little bit of activity here, but if you are out of Colorado, it's not as prevalent. If you are in Texas, not as prevalent. So if your facility is there, then you don't really need to worry so much about the earthquake. You can plan for some other disaster like floods. In this case, this is the example from FEMA, flood zone designation, and this is what talks about floodplains. So floodplains is how you calculate the expectation of when a flood might occur in whenever or whatever zone you might be. And as you can see here on the left, you have zone B and X, you have C and X, A, and so on. And what you need to know for the exam is you need to understand the risk of floodplain. For example, you can look right here at the top, zone B and zone X are between 100-year and 500-year floodplains. What does that mean? That means a flood will happen one time for every 100 years that passes. So you have a 1 in 100 chance to have a flood. That's a 1% chance, right? We definitely multiple 1 times 100. We get 0.01, which is 1%. Same with the flood zone X, where you have a 500-year floodplains, which is 1 in a 500 chance that this area will flood. So that's 1 time 500, which is 0.02, and you can see that right here. Okay, so 0.02%. So what you need to understand is that if your facility reside in a 100-year flood zone, you need to plan for a 1% chance every single year of flood happening, right? And a 0.2% chance in 500-year flood pain. It is not something we really need to worry about, right? So we can focus our efforts on other things. And just to give you an example, this is exactly what the flood map might look like. Again, this is the United States. This is FEMA flood map. So you can see where all the red areas are. These are the prone to flood, right? So again, you have some west coast concern. So in the Silicon Valley in California, where Facebook, Google, Cisco, all these companies are, they are in both flood zones and they are in earthquake zone. So they have to plan for both. But if you are out in, say, Texas, certainly in central Texas right here, you don't need to really have to plan for either, right? You don't get earthquake and you don't get floods. It's just really dry in those particular area. So you have to worry about other things, okay? So those are your natural disasters. There are also concerns like wildfires. There's volcanoes, there's other things like that, but those are very rare in terms of those affecting facilities. It's not that it doesn't happen, but you have to be aware of those areas as it pertains to your facility. For example, volcanoes. There are active volcanoes somewhere up here in Washington, right? If you are on a big island of Hawaii, it is an active volcano. There's active volcano in Montana. So we have to pay attention to those things depending on where our facility lies. So that takes us to man-made disaster. So obviously we have sabotage where somebody destroy our property. We have terrorist where somebody use fear and intimidation to influence the action of other, which is often done through damage, sabotage, those kind of thing, right? And this can all result in power outage, network outage. Maybe they attack a service provider and we lose our network connection. Maybe they attack the power company and we lose our utilities for electricity. Maybe they attack the water plants, so now we lose our water supply, which is a utility we need for our facility, right? There are a lot of different things that come into play with the man-made disaster. So what's important about that is to understand the crime rate in the area where your facility resides, and also maybe you go through some police reports. Maybe you can contact local law enforcement and ask them, hey, in this particular area we are looking to move our business. How this area from crime perspective? Is there any lot of theft? Is there a lot of vandalism? Are people destroying property? Are there any lot of things going on here? A lot of activity from negative fashion going on in this neighborhood, and then they might tell you, yeah, it's pretty dangerous, or they might say, no, it's pretty safe and it's pretty good. So at least at the point you can decide, okay, this is where we want our facility because we have a low risk of man-made disaster. So in the other regard, now we need to talk about disaster recovery. So again, business continuity, it's all about critical business function, right? The critical business functions and all of the asset and process necessary to operate those functions. The disaster recovery side ensure that the critical asset that support the business processes remain operational. The best way to think of this is business continuity is all about operational, disaster recovery is all about technological. Making sure that IT asset, the information technology asset, can support all of the business functions. And that's what we are focused on. That's also why when we talk about business impact analysis and doing business continuity planning, part of it is looking at the system components and what it depended. Application, server, web server, databases, servers and computers and so on, right? There's network, there's a lot of different things that comes into play. That's exactly why we look at this. So when we are looking at it from this perspective, this would be all of our business continuity and this would be your disaster recovery. So in the coming video, we are gonna focus on disaster recovery that you need to know for the exam. So for now, the bottom line here, just to understand the impact of natural and man-made disaster as it pertains to your organization.